Today's episode is about that question we ask ourselves. Is it too late? Is it too late to start new? Is it too late to heal? Is it too late to change my relationship? Is it too late to learn how to detach with love? And whether you've been on this journey for a while or whether you're just starting, I think this is a very valid question to ask. But in soul recovery, we're learning it's never too late. This episode is around the concept of how do we step into a new way of being every day? How do you learn how to change slowly, one step at a time, patterns that are very old and very deeply rooted into our way of being? My answer is you can. There is always hope, and it's never too late. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast, a spiritual path to a happy and healthy life. My name is Reverend Rachel Harrison. I started Recover Your Soul after having profound changes in my life from my recovery of alcoholism, codependency, and control addiction. I was guided to share the tools and principles of spirituality and soul recovery to help others transform their lives as mine was transformed. For us to overcome external circumstances, we need to turn the attention to ourselves, focusing on our inner change and healing. Positive results in our lives will follow. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast. It's Rev Rachel, and I am so glad to be spending more time together today. We're here learning how to be ourselves. We're learning how to regulate our own experience, no matter what's happening on the outside. And, I often say to learn how to be okay if others aren't okay. But what I'm really saying is to learn how to feel however you feel, regardless of how other people feel or what's happening in the world around you. And those feelings are so important. The feelings that you have within yourself are really your own guidance system to help you navigate what's complex out there and to come into your own being, your own wholeness, your own awareness. That's where all the power is. And we do this a lot from the power of detachment. Detachment is still one of the main focused issues here in soul recovery. It's how many of you found this podcast, which I think is so great that episode from season 1 is still the number one listened to episode of all the episodes. So clearly detachment means something. And for today's episode, I wanted to respond to one of the one-way text messages that I got. In the show notes, there's a little link that says, send Rachel a one-way text. And I love this because you guys are doing it. And just like in getting these one-way texts where you have comments or questions, or you just want to share how the podcast is working in your life, I also am so grateful for the reviews that you offer in Apple and on Spotify that allow people to see how this podcast is helping you, how soul recovery is helping in your life. But reading those responses is it's so incredible for me because I can feel you. I can feel this community, and it helps me to understand more about how I'm reflecting in your life. And that's really beautiful to me. But I also love getting these questions that you can offer in this way because it helps me understand more about what you want to talk about. So this was a response to detachment. And they said, I have a question. I need some support. I was just listening to your episode discussing detachment and Al-Anon, and I'm assuming that they mean one of those original episodes on detachment, but there has been lots of episodes on detachment on the Recover Your Soul podcast. So if that is of interest to you, there's lots and lots to choose from. But I'm going to assume that she's talking about one of those early episodes. And it worries me because I've done everything wrong with my husband, who has an alcohol addiction. The 7 detachments make perfect sense, but I've done the opposite and ultimately been an enabler. I worry that there's no coming back from that. And is it too late to detach now? This is a beautiful question, and I'm so excited to be able to reflect on this because I know that this is a big question in life. Is it too late? Is it too late? Have I gone too far in whatever has been happening in my relationship or how I've been in situations to go back? And what I love about this question is that this is a powerful spiritual question because so often, I think, regardless of whether we're talking about, is it too late to learn how to detach? Sometimes we're talking about, is it too late to do something in my life that's totally different? Have I gone down the road so far that I can't recheck in who I am in myself? I can't rebuild my life. I can't make different decisions. I can't do things differently. It's been this way for so long. And this is actually the power of soul recovery. And there's a couple different things that we're going to talk about in this, because one of the number one things that I had such an awareness around when I redid the 9 steps was step 1, the new step 1 in soul recovery, ready for awakening. It's this moment when you recognize that your current situation, the way that it feels for you, your disappointments, your dissatisfaction, your suffering, whatever it is, that of course this is where you're at in your life because you have lived a certain way. You've had certain thoughts. You've shown up in a certain way in your life. It is this moment of grace where you take your power back, where you realize that you have been needing things on the outside to be a certain way, and you recognize that you can stand in your own strength, that you can stand in your own strength. It is this powerful moment, this moment of choice of your own. And so regardless of how you were not even 5 minutes ago, much less an entire relationship, or much less your entire life, you can always make a change in how you are going to be with it, how you're going to see it, how you're going to perceive it, how you're going to feel it. This is about you standing in your own strength. And one of the things that I think about a lot in my life, and I know that I've said this before, is if I'm always judging Rich, for example, or my kids, or even myself or friends for what happened in the past, who we were in the past, I'm not giving them a chance to be who they are today. And I'm not giving myself a chance to be who I am today. So yes, the past always has some play in it, but it doesn't mean that we have to continue to live from those past ways of thinking, feeling, believing, those old patterns. And that's the same in the 7 detachments, in the ways that we've been with people. As soon as you know better, you can do better. Now, is it a switch that switches right away and you make some sort of amazing detachment switch and everything thereafter is completely different and everything's fixed and changed? I wish it was that easy. I wish I could tell you it's that easy, but it's not. It is about learning. It's about changing your perception. It's about seeing through a new lens. And that's what the 9-step soul recovery process walks us through. It walks us through a way to actually be able to change the relationships that we have with the people in our lives so that we can be empowered, so that we can have the ability to let them have their own experience and their own consequences, and that we can stop being so harshly affected by what can often be unhealthy around us. When I think of this in my own life in terms of is it too late for detachment, the stuff that I went through with Alex in particular and with Rich, and having a kid who was so heavily lost and on drugs and had such low self-esteem, and the amount of enabling that I did, the incredible amount of enabling that I did to try to make Alex feel better about himself, to try to get him to do the things that I thought would make it so that he would, go to jobs or go to school, for crying out loud. I just had lunch with some long time friends, and she was saying that her son had a hard time in high school, and especially his senior year, and he was able to pull it out. And, part of me, has all this awareness that I tried all of those things for my kid. And that enabling isn't because we're trying to, when you're in the middle of doing it, when you're in the middle of enabling, it is purely out of love. It's out of love and fear. I think so much about how afraid I was in those years when Alex was really at his lowest point, and that I just didn't see a way out. I I was so consumed with the fear that he would die, that he would either kill himself of his own hand, he would die of a drug overdose, he would die of a car accident from, being inebriated and being out in the world. I didn't know what was going to happen, but mostly I was terrified that he wasn't going to get to live a full and happy life. And seeing him in the depths of so much internal turmoil and darkness within himself, that's the part that is the hardest when you're on the outside watching somebody who's struggling. And talked a lot about how addiction and what we do to soothe those parts of ourselves that are consumed with that amount of pain and suffering, we all will choose something that will numb that pain, that will cover that pain. And it comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes, even if it's just an hour of scrolling on your phone, sometimes you really are looking at what is going on there. Why are we so checked out? Why are we more invested in what's happening in these people's lives than what's happening in our own life? And oftentimes it's because our own life feels heavy. It feels heavy. But what we're doing here is we're not immediately making a change. We're not making a fix that flips a switch and makes everybody around us change. It's this ability for us to look at the power that we have to slowly but surely make different choices along the way that align better with who we are, what we actually need, and allowing others to have the space to have their own experience, whatever it is for them. So when I did my initial podcast episode in season 1 about the detachments, and I read the Al-Anon detachments, which I'm going to read again because I think they're so powerful. And the 7 detachments are not to suffer because of the actions or reactions of other people. And think of this outside of addiction. Think of this just as a human being. Let's pretend like addiction's not even in it. Not to suffer. You know what I talk about all the time? Suffering is the wanting it to be different. Suffering is beyond the pain. You can have the emotions and the hurt that comes from being a human being. That's what it is, being a human being. But to suffer means that we wish that it was different. So not to suffer because of the actions or reactions of other people. Not to allow ourselves to be used or abused by others in the interest of another's recovery. And you can just take the other's recovery and just say, not to allow yourself to be used or abused by others, right? To not allow ourselves to be harmed by others, to be used by them. Not to do for others what they can do for themselves. How often are we doing for others what they can't do for themselves? Not to manipulate situations so that others will eat, go to bed, get up, pay bills, not drink, or behave as we see fit. Hi, it's Rev Rachel, and I'm just taking a quick break to check in with you about the upcoming retreats and workshops in 2025. I know for me, part of my recovery was around meeting in groups and connecting on that deeper level. And so the opportunity for us to come together in retreats, either in person or virtually, helps us to remember that we are not doing it alone, to be able to learn about the 9-step soul recovery process in community, and to be with me personally to receive the teaching and to get that feedback and support one-on-one that is so impactful. I'm going to be having retreats both in Sacramento, California, and also in my neck of the woods in Colorado, and even a virtual retreat if you can't travel. Please check out the website, recoveryoursoul.net, to learn more, and I hope you'll join me this year. Together, we can do the work that will recover your soul. Not to cover up for another's mistakes or misdeeds, not to create a crisis, and not to prevent a crisis if it's the natural course of events. Without addiction, you're just talking about codependency with other people. You're looking at maybe your kids who are being apathetic or into their video games or don't want to help around the house or whatever the standard teenage, young adult situation is with the kids and the humans in our house. Maybe it's a partner. Maybe it's your friends. Maybe it's your coworkers. This plays into so many things. And the answer is it's never too late, because this is not about them. This is about you. This is about you and how you are choosing to show up. Behaviors and patterns take a while to switch. They take a while to change. The first step is to not judge yourself. The first step is to give yourself some grace that you did the best that you could with what you thought was the only solution you had at the time. That's what I saw with my son when I was watching him completely in the depths of despair at those times, and I didn't have all the tools and I was just in fear. That was the best that I had at that time. And so doing all of the things that are on this particular sheet, not doing a single one of them the way that Al-Anon teaches, but trying to get him up to go to school, being completely upset if he was upset, letting him speak poorly to me, doing for him what he could be doing for himself. I would try to prevent all the crises, and in a lot of it, I would create a crisis because I was overdoing it. I would cover up for him so that he wouldn't get in trouble. I did every single one of these things on a regular basis because I thought that it was going to help it. Are you ready to step into your soul recovery? Visit the website recoveryoursoul.net to learn more about the 9-step soul recovery process. I hope that you'll join us the first Monday of every month for the free soul recovery support group on Zoom, where we learn more about soul recovery and connect with each other. If you'd like to work directly with me to move through the 9-step soul recovery process, I'm here for you, but you can also choose to work the steps on your own with individual modules intended to support you to work at your own pace and on your own time. And if you want even more soul recovery, join us for the Recover Your Soul bonus podcast for Patreon members and Apple Podcast subscribers, where I interview amazing people sharing soul recovery tips for us and also do spiritual book studies. You can also find daily inspiration on Facebook and Instagram and join our private Facebook community. Visit the website for more information, links, and registration for everything. Back to the episode. If you listen to my story, and so a lot of people go back and start at the beginning of the podcast, which I think is amazing because it is a transformational journey that I've been on, that I've been sharing with you. That episode where I talk about this was in 2020, and it was intense. And there was a lot going on at that time. That was before Alex had moved to California. It was before he had gotten his life together. It was before he had found a beautiful and loving life partner. It was before he had discovered who he was. It was when he was in the depths of his despair. And so as I read these things, I had to do the same principles that I've been teaching you about the law of attraction. You have to give yourself a little bit of space to call out for what you want, even if it's not here yet. Because if we don't give ourselves grace for how we are showing up, then we're just in judgment of ourselves. We're using our inner critic to get all over us and to cover us in shame and guilt. And you can't get anywhere with shame and guilt, because guess what you're doing with shame and guilt? You are still enabling. You're still enabling others, and you're enabling yourself to be in your lowest place. But when you step back and you give yourself some grace and you give yourself some compassion and you say, this is how I thought it was the best, then you're moving in that space. That's the new step one, where you're saying, I have been behaving out of the only way that I've known how to behave, that I've known how to show up and how to react and how to respond. But now that I know better, I'm going to do better. And I'm powerless over every single thing outside of myself. This is step 2 in soul recovery. Powerless over every single thing outside of myself. I'm powerless over their addiction. I'm powerless over how they feel. I'm powerless over how they feel about themselves. But I can take my power back, and I can attend to myself. And I can begin to show up in a different way. And I'm going to give myself time to make those small and steady changes. Those small and steady changes. And what happened with me and Alex and Rich and Bodhi and, my whole family is I had been so enabling for so long that when I started to switch, I fumbled it a lot, I didn't do it very smooth a lot because sometimes I would swing the pendulum way over too far and be way too rigid. And then sometimes I would feel guilty about how rigid I was being, and then I would swing back into enabling again. And, that's just learning. It's just learning. You just got to give yourself some space to change the behaviors. Man, when we think about the people in our lives who are really having a hard time, if everybody just made one little degree of positive change every day, by the time you've stacked up days, huge amounts of change happens. But part of what's happening is that we're all making these adjustments or non-adjustments, as some people may be doing, in collection with each other. It isn't just that one person makes the change and it changes everything. If you think about a big highway, you can't just change all the lanes. You have to change one lane at a time and check, is it clear? Is it okay? Is this now okay to move over here? Should I be in the fast lane on the left, or should I be on the slow lane on the right? If I know I need to exit, I've got to think these many steps ahead. It's kind of like that with the human beings in your life too. But this is the perfect time to use the stay in your lane. I love the stay in your lane because as a driver on the highway, you may be pissed off at all the other drivers, but really the only person you're in control of is you. And the more that you attend to your journey, your driving, how you're interacting with the people around you in a healthy way, you're actually helping the entire system work better. That when you do better, they can do better. But we're not in charge of them, you're only in charge of you. So it's never too late to detach. Because the detachment's within yourself. You were powerless over all the stuff that they were doing anyway. When we really start to realize how intense somebody else's feelings and somebody else's situation and their addiction and all of the noise that's in their own head is, and we've been trying to figure it out for them. We've been trying to heal that for them. We've been trying to give them the self-esteem that they so need and want. We've been trying to tell them that if they would get the work or get the help or go get therapy or do the recovery, that things would be better. We're powerless over whether they make those choices. And that's hard when they're not making those choices. But when you come back into your own lane, when you turn the attention to yourself and you recognize every moment, every second is an opportunity to start new, to start fresh, to get on the path to be a better participator in the huge spectrum of this highway of all of us. And you leave the past behind and you stop judging yourself and others beyond this moment right now. It's never too late. It's never too late. Because then we are taking our power back to ourselves. We are in this space where we can respond in a more loving, compassionate manner. We can speak more clearly and honestly about what it is that we need. We can heal. This is what soul recovery is all about. Step 3 in soul recovery, we begin to look at what are these core wounds? What are these beliefs and patterns that are what I'm looking at the world through? And how are they keeping me stuck? And one of those core beliefs and wounds for me was that it was my personal job to make sure that everyone in my family was okay and happy. And if they weren't, then I couldn't be either. That was a belief that was keeping me stuck. And it kept me in an enabling role because I kept going back out to try to fix and change them. But the more I could just give them grace for wherever they were, the more that I could stand in my strength and follow these detachments and say, I'm not going to suffer. I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to not be happy because of the choices that you're making in your life. That's the first one. The second Al-Anon detachment is not to allow ourselves to be used or abused by others. I got very clear about my boundaries. I can look at my family members Not that we've had these kinds of words in a long time, but when I started to be able to say things like, it doesn't feel good to me when you talk to me like that. I won't allow that kind of behavior. If you're going to speak to me like that, I'm going to hang up the phone. Call me back when you're able to deal with this in a more calm way. Those were things I could never say before, because I was afraid that if I said those things, then Alex would freak out or something bad would happen, and then I'd be responsible for his unhappiness. You just start realizing, no, I can just take this baby step. And I'll tell you, when I say those strong things, back in those couple years ago when I was in that space where I was having to learn how to say these things, my heart is pumping. I have a dry throat. I have a stomach ache. I'm afraid to speak in this strong way because the underbelly of me feels responsible for him, or did used to feel responsible for him. And then I'm not going to do for him what he can do for himself. I'm not going to do for Rich what he can do for himself anymore. This part of me that went around and just waited on everybody and did everything for everyone else. It took time. And, I still catch myself. On this one. And that's okay. This isn't about being perfect. This is about having awareness that these are not our roles and that we can just slowly, slowly detach. Detachment is for you. Detachment is loving. Detachment means that we stop hurting and suffering over somebody else's choices. And then the other one is not to manipulate situations so others will eat, go to bed, get up, pay bills, not drink, or behave as we see fit. Wow, that's the just let them. That's they are responsible for their own happiness or demise. They have got to do their own thing. That is the step back, and allow them to have their own life. Give them sovereignty over who they are. And if that means that there's going to be some consequences, then you're moving into the not creating a crisis or preventing a crisis. Not lying for somebody else, covering up mistakes or misdeeds. So as I started to practice these principles, my relationships changed, but it took time. It took time because when you start setting boundaries, and a boundary being the behavior that you're going to do if somebody else is behaving a certain way, if you think a boundary is you're telling somebody else how to be, that's control. But a boundary, a healthy boundary says, when you speak to me that way, I'm going to leave, right? You're saying what you're going to do. I have a boundary about drinking. And I've said this story many times. Rich is coming up on we actually picked a date the other day when I celebrated my 7-year anniversary of sobriety. Rich was like, when was it that I went to California? And we looked and it was March. And he's like, that is the last drink that I've had. I'd like to actually claim that day so that I can start to really mark my time too. His sobriety is his deal. But my boundary is not an ultimatum or a control about saying, you can't drink. And if you've listened to the podcast for any period of time, you've heard all the stories about him going back out or him testing the waters again, or, a year later telling me that he was still doing. Now, if he had been drinking in the house on a regular basis, I had said to him very clearly, I am not going to set an ultimatum that says, this is how I demand that you behave for me to be in your life. But a boundary says, if you choose to have this be the way that you want to have your life, I'm not going to control what you do. You are more than welcome to be a drinker if you want to. It no longer works for me. And so if that's a choice that you're going to make, I'm going to make a choice that's right for me. So that's very different than a boundary being called saying, I have a boundary that he can't drink. No. The boundary is not that he can't drink. The boundary is that if he chooses to live a lifestyle that is around drinking, I'm going to make a choice for myself that is likely to not be married. Now, I'm very grateful and I'm very aware of the fact that over the last 4 years that he, 5, 6, 7, so 4 years that he has been continuing to kind of dance this dance, it hasn't looked like the dance that many of you are in right now. But man, we did that dance for 15, 20 years together. So I know exactly how that feels. But it's taken me a while to get to the place where I can see these detachments and I can recognize it's not like an all or nothing. It's a slow and steady shift within myself. And every day is actually a new day for me to align more clearly with who I am and what I want in my life and how to show up in my best self. And some days are really good and I'm on track and it's on target, and some days are completely not. It still is a slippery slope. But this is the part of being human, which means it's never too late. It's never too late. And then the other piece, just as a final close, which is this isn't about reaching some destination where everything's easy and fine. This piece of us that is continually trying to strive for some destination that doesn't have the complexity of life is only suffering. It's only going to continue to bring us to a place where we're never satisfied. That our expectations are so unrealistic and so high that we miss the part that says, oh, life is sticky and complex and beautiful and wild and weird and good and bad. And if I just show up every single day in this present moment right now, not in the past, not in the future, but here, today, living from the best I can today. And sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's weaker. Okay. That's just fine. But to be in your heart today, to love yourself today, that's all that matters, because that slow, steady shift every single day to be in awareness, to be in higher consciousness, to remember your wholeness, to see and have compassion for the people around you, for their own experience, and to not take responsibility for them, and to practice to your best ability these 7 detachments with gentleness and grace to yourself, you are on the right path. That's all we can ask for. That's all that is asked for. That is healing. That is self-love. So if you're in a relationship where you're looking at it and you're saying, I have not done it, quote unquote, right, that's okay. There is no right or wrong. Soul recovery is void of judgment. It's about awareness. And just the fact that you've opened your eyes and began to look at these concepts and searched for detachment, searched to go to Al-Anon rooms, searched for soul recovery, that is it. That means that you are awakening. That means that you are healing from whatever it is that's in there. That's where you're stepping into connection with a higher power. That's the next step. That's step 4 in soul recovery. To connect to a higher power. And now that you've seen the patterns and the beliefs and the stories that are in there rolling around, now you say there's something greater still. And I'm ready to connect to that. I'm ready to have that heal my life. And then you work through the next steps, which are about releasing and letting go of those beliefs that no longer serve you, stepping into the fullness of who you are, deepening your spiritual practice and becoming a light in the world. Now, all of that together is the process of recovering your soul. But it's not a one and done. It's a process that gives you the tools to handle what is hard in life. And I always want to remind you that the value of the relationships that you have is more than you can understand sometimes in the depths of our sorrow. And it's never about what's coming. It's never about abandoning who you are. I want you to stand in the strength of who you are always. And I'm a big proponent of really healing yourself in the midst of whatever is going on, so that whatever choices that you make from your whole healed self instead of running, but also having the ability to truly look and say, how enmeshed am I in these relationships with people that do not want to change or can't change, or where no matter what happens, I can't fully stand in the strength of who I am. I can't fully awaken. I can't fully move forward in my true nature of who I am, my authentic self. And to notice that these detachments speak to that too. Not to suffer because of the actions or reactions of other people. Not allow yourself to be used or abused by others in the interest of their life. Not to do for others what they can do for themselves. Where are you in your life where you can step fully into your own authentic self? How can you move into healthy, loving detachment in all areas with all people, which really means that you turn over other people's lives and you stand fully in your own? As always, I am here for you to help you on the soul recovery journey. You can work the steps on your own through the soul recovery programs. Each one is modules with videos with me, helping you move through the step, guided meditation, journaling prompts. I would love for everybody to take advantage of these because it's kind of like being in session with me, but you get to do it on your own. Or you can do one-on-one sessions with me, either as a check-in just to get some support along the way, or I'm here to work the whole process with you. Join me on a retreat. Come and join us for the once-a-month soul recovery support group. There's just so many ways to step into this process. But the only ask is that you love yourself enough to choose you and your journey. To really be desiring of understanding who you are and how you can heal for your own well-being, so that you can be your brightest light. And as that light shines, it indeed and fully does affect the people around you. It really does. All it takes is one person to truly make remarkable change, to inspire others to do the same for themselves. Until next time, namaste. Thank you for listening, and I hope that helps support your soul recovery process. Just a reminder that every Friday is the Recover Your Soul bonus podcast. This podcast is for Patreon members and Apple Podcast subscribers. And not only do you get an incredible interview or book study that comes with being part of that community, but your subscribing helps support this podcast and the Recover Your Soul community. If you want to listen to those bonus episodes but can't subscribe right now, do know that you can be a free Patreon member and have access for limited time to new episodes. Visit the website recoveryoursoul.net or check out the show links below for coupons and information for upcoming events. I thank you for sharing this podcast with your friends and family. I thank you for giving it 5 stars, and the reviews that are left bring tears to my eyes. I am honored to be part of your life. Together, we can do the work that will recover your soul. The Recover Your Soul podcast and its content is for educational purposes only and is not allied or representative of any organizations or religions. It's based on the opinions and experience of Reverend Rachel Harrison. Recover Your Soul claims no responsibility to any persons or entity for any liability, loss, damage, or cause alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of its use. Applications or interpretations of the information represented herein. Take what you need and leave the rest.